when I start writing anything, I free write first, which for me means with a pen and a notebook. That's the most raw and pure connection to my heart that I can find that way. Why I write or what motivates me to write is, there's a quote by a writer named C. Day Lewis that we don't write in order to be understood, but we write in order to understand. So for me, I think that's it. So I don't usually sit down at the page like I've figured something out and I want to tell you about it so you get it. It's I don't know either, but something has just caught my heart or caught my mind or maybe my left elbow, and I have to write about it.
People are fascinating, especially up close. More especially when you get them talking about the things that they love. This is From the Hip, conversations in the service of passion, purpose, and play. I'm Adrianne Gunn. You ready to play? Today on From the Hip, I'm sitting with Jen Violi, author of Putting Makeup on Dead People. We get to talking about grief and how it's actually the pathway to joy.
What I haven't talked about with people, like I used to do like these short little videos and I put out inspiring and that sort of thing and sort of catching people up. I haven't really been that revealing of my own personal world. And frankly, I've had a lot of like grief and illness. Girl. And so one of the people that I've been wanting to talk to, like the first moment that I'm like, I'm doing this thing, you were like at the top of my list. When I reached out to the first group of people I wanted to talk to, I wanted to talk to you because of how you've been like openly sharing, I suppose, some of the like worst things that people could go through that they never talk about. Yeah. So if you were open to talking about some of that with me in the midst of like, sure, how do we walk our path and feed ourselves with what we've decided we're doing for a living in the midst of, like, in my own world, I don't want to get out of bed. I didn't eat today. The best thing I did all day was walk around the block, and how people don't generally talk about how like showing up in life can look different. Because there's a lot of room for like the Tony Robbins, like highly pumped up gurus and like cursing and like, fuck, get all the things, win, more is more. And I've had a path of the last 5-ish, maybe more years of the power of non-striving and the beauty of surrendering to what's actually fucking going on. Yeah. And so I'm like, selfishly, I'm letting you know that those are some of the things I would love to chat with you about. And it sounds like you came. Also, just in case, we have water. I still have emergency chocolate. If you were to need more of that, or any of those things are readily at hand.
Is there like a signal I give for emergency chocolate, like a hand signal, or do I just ask for it?
I think if I'm feeling it, if I'm feeling your ask underneath what's happening, I will reach for some. And if you ask for it, I will get some too. Okay. Like there's not everyone has the skills of like asking for what they want.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. So we could sort of formula start of like hi, I'm me and I do this, or like I know of you as like I got introduced to.
I met you at Moxie.
You did. We met at a networking event.
When it was women. In that secret society place.
Yes. My curiosity is how I'm remembering it is I think you were utilizing the wing woman strategy.
Yes.
Because I may have heard more about you through the mouth of your friend that was standing next to you than I did from you.
Carrie came with me, I think.
Yeah. This is my friend Jen. She's an amazing writer. She's written this book, thus and such, and then like, oh my god, and then she kept telling me how great you were, and then eventually we were like Facebook friends because that's my strategy at networking. I don't know, did we talk to each other much? Do you remember?
I don't know that we talked much. But yeah, then we saw each other at some other things after that. Other networking things.
It's hilarious because I'm a big fan of yours because we connected on Facebook and because you have been sharing parts of your world, and even as you write your own reflections on life, they're beautiful and poetic. And there was something, I don't remember, it seemed like a manifesto for self-care. I remember what you wrote. You've written many a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But is that what you tell people? You tell people, hi, I'm Jen, I'm a writer? Is that your...
Yeah, writer usually comes first. I say I'm a writer and a developmental editor.
Ooh.
And a mentor for other writers.
Nice.
Facilitator too. I mean, sometimes I throw that in, but you know.
Fun. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you pronounce your last name?
Violi.
Violi.
So both of the I's are pronounced like E's.
Ooh, that's like
the end of ravioli, unfortunately.
It's like viola, which is gorgeous, and ravioli.
Well, and so technically I think I'm the plural of that. Like in Italian, like viola would be like an instrument or a flower.
Right.
So, but making it plural would be violi.
Nice.
So I'm more flowers and more music.
That's awesome. When did you learn that about your name?
I think I figured out the thing when I was studying Italian a little bit.
Nice. So you, when was that?
Oh, just when I went to Italy a couple times, like, and just trying to like learn based on mostly knowledge of Spanish to see what I could apply.
That's fair. I think
Yeah.
that's a path many people take. I've been considering a language to learn because they'll change your life, change your brain.
Yeah.
And I'm between Italian and Portuguese
Oh,
as choices.
both so pretty.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm also a little scared. I'll admit that. I'm a little scared of who I'll be
Yeah.
as I learn a new language. I don't know. How did you find learning Italian?
Well, I don't know that I've ever learned a full language. You know, like I've
Yeah.
not become fluent. Like the language I know best is Spanish, but I wouldn't call myself fluent. I was highly functional, you know, when I did the Camino or was in Spain for a little while or other places, but.
You're a Camino person?
Mm-hmm.
Did the Camino.
Yeah.
Have you done the Camino? I'm talking to this one person who's watching us right now.
Hi, one person.
Oh my gosh! I mean, certainly you've lived a life, so there are many, many stories in there. When you've done the Camino, maybe check in on that. You've traveled to Italy. Was that your... Oh, I think that's the printer deciding to wake up. I thought it was a
Good
roommate
morning.
showing up. Good morning, printer. Printer's like, I'm at the ready. Should you need me? So we've got emergency chocolate and printing, all at the ready, just in case.
Okay, good.
So when did you say yes to this writing adventure?
Probably as soon as I could write.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember writing when I was little, writing poems, beautiful, terrible poems, or terrible, beautiful poems for
Nice.
every holiday or birthdays or whatever. Illustrations went with them.
Ooh, nice.
One of my favorite techniques was making things magical by surrounding them with yellow, because I thought they glowed, you know, like leprechauns. I love drawing little leprechauns and like doing like goldenrod all around them.
Nice.
You know.
That does sound perfect. That sounds perfect. So, and then you shared them with people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thrilled. I'm like picturing a small Jen.
I should have made one for you today. Why didn't I bring you a card?
I don't know. It's okay.
Okay, well, another time.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so you've just always, it's been one of the ways of you like accessing yourself and being in the world.
Poems and my diaries, you know, I had those regularly. I don't remember when it started. I mean, for sure I was doing that in kindergarten and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to remember. I was very much athlete-y when I was younger. Like sports was the thing. And then somewhere around 12 was when I started writing poems. and I remember.
Were they terrible also?
So they rhymed in a very like standard and predictable meter. Oh, yeah, I have one in my head now. It's terrible. Yeah, they were pretty bad.
Good.
And I actively decided around then to change my handwriting too. So I would practice trying to like I wanted my handwriting to look cool or something. So I like created a new handwriting for myself, and I was writing poems. I don't know if I started like reading books on purpose. I was a very non-student for a really, really long time. So like reading and writing and that sort of stuff was not my game. I think the things that I wrote for assignments generally, when I would do the assignments, which wasn't very frequently, and maybe you've used this writing prompt, it's like I would write a story because I had to, and the story would be, the character in the story had to write a story, but they didn't know what to write about. I shit you not. Like, I think I did that assignment like 3.
I just slapped my microphone. Really professional.
At least 3 times. I'm like, I have to write something. I have no idea what to write about. I was like, what if? I know. Super clever. What if there was a character in my story who had to write but didn't know what to write about?
Yeah. Well, it's good to start with the material that's there, what you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't quite start taking it seriously until I think high school, when I was warned that I had to get good grades to stay on the basketball team. Like the school that I went to, this is the path that female athletes will be confronted with. I don't know if male athletes are confronted with, oh my gosh, you have to be a good student to play. But I was, and they're like, you have to get like everybody has you have to get a 3-point or higher, but everyone on the team is 3.5 and up. Like, I just had a ridiculously smart team, and I had pretty much gotten C's or D's in most things that weren't shop, choir, or PE. So I actually like took it seriously, and I took a study hall, and I because I never did homework really before, so I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna have to try. So I did all my and it turns out that for me, at least, accidentally school was pretty easy if you actually did the work. I would get it all done. It was weird. I didn't know. I had no idea. It took me, I had a 45-minute period. I'd get it all done there. I'd do the reading on the bus. And I accidentally got straight A's this one term. And I'm like, fuck, now I'm going to have to keep that up. And then writing. Yeah, and then writing became a thing for me. I was like connecting with myself. And, I think Tom Robbins and Carrie Fisher, I started reading them around the same time. And they both have a ridiculous way with language.
Yeah, really unique.
Right? Yeah. So I think that's when I started falling in love with the written word and communication and what it could do. Did you like go to school for your craft, and did you like get super serious with it?
I did. I got so serious, like super serious.
Yeah? What did you do?
No, I'm making it sound dramatic. Because that's part of what I do too. I have a theater background as well. So.
Oh, I didn't know you have a theater background.
Yeah, so that's part of it. Yeah, I mean, I guess, so I was an English major in college. And then after that, I actually did grad school in theology. So not writing, but definitely the big reflecting on the big issues of life kind of stuff that tapped into that part of me. And then later after that, I went back to get an MFA in creative writing.
Damn.
So I guess that's serious in some ways, but mostly it felt fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of that when I think of whether I would want to go to grad school. Essentially, for me, I would just do it because it'd be fun. Yeah. Like get an MBA. It just sounds like a blast to me. I noticed that they have masters and PhDs in creativity, that are like
just in creativity.
Yeah.
Why didn't I know that? That's probably what I would have done.
I know. I looked it up just in case. I'm like, I was making it up in my head because I have a desire to get an honorary doctorate, and I'm like, what?
I'll give you one.
Yeah. Yeah. You can.
I just decided I could.
Nice. So. Yeah, I was like, if I was gonna get an honorary doctorate in something, what would I want it to be? Sort of like creativity, I think. And then I was like, wait, does that exist? And I looked it up. But MFA in creative writing sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was a cool time.
it sounds to me like when you said it out loud, I was like, oh, you get like, I don't know why the stamp would go on the butt, but like you're like certification in my head. It's just how my brain works.
Like after workshop at night at the bar.
Like you get the official stamp, like a branding of like, I don't know, perfected a thing. I've got the certification.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I have this conversation a lot in working with writers too, and people feeling, I mean, we all have imposter syndrome, and people feeling like they're not good enough, or do I need to have a degree, or do I need to have this? And, you know, mostly you just need to write. And so for me, getting an MFA was more about having had a moment of realization that I needed to honor that part of me. And I wanted to be able to do it in a place where I could focus on that and be mentored and have community around that. So there are ways to cultivate that aren't called grad school.
Sure.
So
that's awesome.
So I guess I just want to say that to be like, you know, especially if you're watching and you're like, I want to be a writer, or am I a writer, and do I need that? I don't think it's essential. It was a way that was really helpful and powerful for me, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about, like, there's like an imposter syndrome around it, and then there's I think people are called to want to have easy ways to label themselves, like that there's a comfort in an identity.
Yeah.
I've had issues with, like, as a musician, as a songwriter, as a performer and entertainer, there were tons of times when I wasn't writing songs. I had a challenge calling myself a songwriter, or I had a challenge calling myself a writer. I've technically had some things published in magazines and things in the past, and so technically I'm a published writer, but for me, feeling like, I mean, like, I do it, I write for myself, I do publish things, but like if there's some sort of race one must, you know, accomplish. But like with me, I was like, okay, I write maybe a song every year, every other year. That doesn't feel like I've written songs, but I don't feel like a songwriter. I had the hardest time allowing myself to say yes to these multiple identities of things that I do, because there are writers, and I'm not one of those. And then I went like levels up. I was like, well, what feels more true? Like when I write and when I do any particular one of my arts, I've been thinking of myself as more of a performer, entertainer, and then I don't know if it's like edutainer. There's something that's part of my identity that has a bit to do with wanting to inspire and motivate and delight people.
Amuse.
Well, there's the entertaining part, but then there's like, I actually want to stir a fire.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that sort of like a catalyst or that sort of thing is, but all of those other things I do, whether it's acting or writing or singing, like are tools to do this other thing.
Yeah.
For me. I don't know.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
Different ways you can express your you-ness.
Yeah. Like using a bunch of different tools to express something, but it's like connecting. There's an energy that I want in relationship to the other person.
Yeah.
Is there any particular, like, so I've seen you be poetic. Do you still like write poetry? Is that part of what you put in the world?
I probably don't call it poetry as much, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's a label where I would say, no, you know, I'm not a poet.
Right.
Because I know the poets that I know, you know, they've really studied that craft and technique and form. And yes, so I definitely write poems all the time. Probably a lot of my posts on Facebook are poems.
Right.
But they're not informed by study, which I need to be true to the thing that I said earlier, so it doesn't make them any less valid.
Right. No, that's fair. Yeah. So what do you like? Is there a thing you're after when you write, or is there something you chase, or is it something internal? Like what draws you to do you type? Do you handwrite? Whichever
that looked like it could have been a symbol or like a signal for emergency chocolate, but maybe it wasn't. Or maybe it was. I do both. You know, when I start writing anything, I free write first, which for me means with a pen and a notebook. That's the most raw and pure connection to my heart that I can find that way. Why I write or what motivates me to write is, you know, there's a quote by a writer named C. Day Lewis that we don't write in order to be understood, but we write in order to understand. So for me, I think that's it. So I don't usually sit down at the page like I've figured something out and I want to tell you about it so you get it. You know, it's I don't know either, but something has just caught my heart or caught my mind, or, you know, maybe my left elbow, and I have to write about it. To see what's there, and then usually understanding surfaces from that. So sometimes it's just like therapy for myself, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, love it. So this book that your friend Carrie was really excited about has a really awesome title.
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
It's called Putting Makeup on Dead People. I don't know why I do that that smile afterwards. Dead people, Shazam!
Jazz hands!
Yeah,
Nice. It is a gorgeous title.
Thank you.
And what? Forgive me, I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
I want to.
Well, I feel like I'm just going to storm out of here. That would be really dramatic.
Damn it.
But I won't.
So I won't talk to you about, like, what's in it and that sort of thing. But what's to be found? Like, well, what would an audience member find, maybe, but what did you find in writing it? Because I don't...
Yeah.
It's a great title, and it makes me think I know what it's about.
Well, in some ways it is about putting makeup on dead people, although not an instructional. When I went to do readings on a little book tour thing after the book came out, I did have some people show up occasionally thinking they were going to get instructions rather than coming to a literary reading. So there's not instructions, but it's rooted in my experience of losing my dad when I was 14. So he died on my second day of high school. And the main character in the novel, Donna, also loses her dad as she's starting high school. And, you know, there the paths diverge. There are certainly elements of my life that are in there. But, you know, people who handled grief in very different ways. For her, she shut down and didn't do anything and was just trying to figure out what to do until she finally realizes maybe she wants to be a mortician. So it's her journey of exploring that and moving through grief. And, you know, finding joy in the wake of grief would be one way to put it.
So when we met, I think you and another friend of mine, book plug, Kate Gray, one of the many Kate Grays one can find, a poet, had just written Carry the Sky, which is also a story about grief. So what's flashing in my head is when we met and your friend was telling me about this book of yours, I went to Kate's reading, and I think it was the same year. And one of the first things she said about this story in her life that was around grief was that grief itself was the path to joy. It was one of those moments that I've had in life many a time where I'm like, my face will crinkle up, and I'm like, I think someone's telling me a supremely profound truth, and I need to put a pushpin in it. And I believe it. It sounds like this faint rumor at the time where it sounds paradoxical. Like the depths of grief itself is the thing that gives you access to joy. And since then I've learned many things about how emotions work and our ability to experience and express emotions and feel things, literally being able to feel things is that path the access. If you break yourself open towards the bottom, you can break yourself open upward too. Yeah. That kind of idea. But when we met, I was chewing on that idea of grief, sorrow, also joy. being entangled, and it was very confusing to me because I didn't know how to do or experience emotions at that time in my life. They were
back when we met
around then. Yeah, like my path of believing. Everybody kept telling me this rumor that emotions were important, and it was important to feel them, and that there was like. And I was just like, so you're saying emotions are important.
And I have to feel them.
You feel them, you have feelings that you feel.
And then what?
And it was sort of like coming from another planet, like I'd, like seeing other people have emotions, or like, previous years in my life, I'd been the kind of person who would like cry once a year whether I wanted it or not, or wanted to or not. It would like
I cry
explode.
once a day whether I want to or not.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, and I cry way more now. Like it was part of the beginning of a path of discovering what the heck she meant about that. And I'm loving that you're, like, part of me asking you to be here is a little bit about that journey for me in the last few years, because since then I have experienced a great deal of grief. And I'd love to know more about when you were saying grief and joy and how they're connected. Do you have more thoughts on that personally? Like today's version?
I have so many thoughts on that. I mean, sit back. We're going to be here for a little while.
Wake up and shut.
You relax. If you need to go get a drink, come back.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny to think, because, I wrote that book I wrote the first draft of that book when I was evacuated from New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina in the middle of my grad program. And, that was 2005. And so between like 2005 and, 2008, I was working on that book. And at that time, my understanding of what it meant for grief to lead to joy is totally different, or I guess it's deepened since then. Because that was an early grief. It was a formative grief, losing my dad when I was, just becoming a teenager. And it was something that defined me and defined my search for it. And now, I guess the distinction I would make is then I thought of joy as something more simplistic than the way that I understand it now.
Ooh.
I think I thought of joy as this, you're happy and you're having fun and you're here and engaged and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And what I've come to understand joy this year as, because I have been on the search for it, I've given myself a new role called the original detective of joy, which maybe you saw me post about on
That's
Facebook.
That's amazing.
And it's really been about seeing joy as this deep urge for vitality, kind of like that, this primal, like if I had an animal noise that I made, like, a lion roar or an elephant, I don't know what that's called. The thing. Yeah, we can make elephant noises later.
I don't think our mics would like it then.
We won't do it. There will be like a lot of saliva. And yeah, maybe that's just not sanitary for right now.
Right.
But anyway, it is, I think of it as like that, just the primal urge to be alive. And it's not something that can get easily knocked over. It's there. It's me rooted. So of course that would be connected to grief in a different way, because grief is also a primal expression of aliveness. It's a different kind of wail to the world, and they're intertwined. And so, this year it's been mega loss year. And I think some of that, but I had a friend who was murdered last Christmas, and every time a new grief happens, it's a deepening of that experience, and like this time it was just staggering in terms of, I thought I knew about grief. I wrote a novel about grief, like, so I should be schooled and solid in that, but no, so that was followed by a writer that I was working with. So a client and someone who was becoming a friend also died suddenly within a month after that. And then an old close friend died later this year. So this year has been like mega, mega grief.
Yeah.
And I think that's why my new understanding of joy has surfaced, because it's been about how can I survive in the face of this and this and this. And that's why it had to be something deep. It couldn't just be that like, oh, I'm so happy to be here version of joy.
I've definitely experienced in my life a lot of that sort of, I don't want to say manic joy.
Yeah.
Because like people say manic like it's a bad thing, but manic's just super great and it's a lot of fun. And I've experienced a lot of that euphoric high in many different versions. Like some of that of like in a flow state of joy and almost even sometimes in a version of it that's almost scary because it feels too good that it's terrifying. I have a songwriter that I enjoy who has a song called Too Much Happiness, and I think even Brene Brown like talks about how some people have discomfort with happiness and joy, and they, if I can call up the term she uses, they immediately, when a joyful thing happens, they immediately start to think of how it's going to fall apart at a disaster. And that's her concept of people's relationship with joy. But I was like, no, but in my case, like actually the pleasure and the joy is actually terrifying to me sometimes, just because it was such extreme of emotion. And I've had moments of like illness and grief where it just like things that were joy-filled were so much simpler and weirdly slower. Like, holy shit, that cloud right now.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about it? Or this morning, my tea was on point. Just out of nowhere. Like I would have days where like it was like life-alteringly hard to drink a cup of water because I accidentally chose a glass that was just too heavy for who I was that day. I don't know if you can relate to this. It's like waking up in such a state that I would put water in a glass and then I would lift and like whatever like inflammation was in my body or whatever non-energy I had, like that glass of water would be hard and I would be crying over like, oh my god, I have to lift. Life is hard. Like I could have that kind of day.
Yeah.
But in the midst of like a day that felt that challenging to meet it would be Daphne is a flower that exists, and then just I'd lived a whole life. I'd lived an entire life.
I know.
Until just last year where I'd smelled freaking Daphne.
Yeah, until I moved to Portland, and then I moved here and I was like, what is this intoxicating delight? And if you haven't smelled it, you have to. Right?
And to just like finally get out, like, okay, I get outside of my house and I'm just gonna try this walking thing. They say walking is exercise. I'm tired of looking at the same sets of walls. I'm just gonna walk, and then suddenly to be surrounded by this intoxicating Daphne smell, and for it to be so beautiful and touching that it's made my entire day. This one moment, and these were the kind of moments I was saying to you earlier that like whether we've actually had a conversation. There was, while you've been going through this year, I lost one of my favorite people in life. She died, I think 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago at this point. And so I had been experiencing grief there and grief over relationships and stuff. So there's a lot of grief and sadness in my world. And your reaching out and telling about it, like just trying to do a day of, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna have this tea, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
like, and then when grief hits, it's like I don't think people talk about it much.
No.
Just so, because, like, I've been grateful because you're a writer and how you express yourself and engage, and that you're the kind of person on social media and Facebook that wants to connect. So you use it in a particular kind of way and you make choices.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I got to see a reflection of some of the challenges that I was silently struggling with because of how I was using Facebook, not letting people into my world, just can't describe the sadness and the depth of it, and like, okay, if I let myself cry right now, will that ever end?
Yeah.
Like, is there a bottom to this dark ocean of this thing I'm feeling right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those joyous moments was seeing and reading things that you were writing in these moments and going like, oh, we're not alone. None of us are alone in this like sad path. And yet still, definitely we like have jobs we do. We help people.
Right. At the same time, you're supposed to function.
I don't know.
In the world.
How does that work?
It's been a strange year for that. I mean, obviously when I was 14, I was not running my own business. Or maybe not obviously.
Right.
And I had to go to school and do things then too, of course. But it is different to be an adult and to be responsible for my income and, life through that, and to be doing that this year. And, one thing that I've been super grateful for is that I tend to work with amazing people who are really compassionate and empathic, and, they gift me with the same grace that I gift them. Mm-hmm. Because if someone comes to me and they're grieving and we need to reschedule a meeting, it's not a big deal.
Right.
It might be a bummer, but it's not a big deal. And luckily, as things came up and I had to reschedule things and shift things or take a little more time, everyone was gracious. And so that helps.
Yeah.
And also as a writer, what I'm encouraging people to do all the time is to write into their vulnerability and to write through it. If they want to work on a particular project, and right now they're feeling this, like maybe they're super angry, mm-hmm. and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the project, I will often encourage writers to just write through the anger. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I just found a way into my story that I didn't know before. So
yes,
it can help. The letting myself feel the emotion and experience the emotion can help move into my creative work and be healing at the same time.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I have a curiosity about that. So that's something that you tell the people that you're working with to do.
Yes.
How does that work for yourself? Are you someone who tells people, hey, do this thing,
and doesn't do it at all?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm in moments where like I get paid to help people shift their mental patterns, and then it's like I hear myself in my own head like, ah, and sometimes it works to hear me being like cheerleader, go lady, and sometimes mm-hmm. I'm just like, that makes it worse.
Yeah. Sometimes
my own medicine is plays back and forth between whether it's like a tiny demon in my head or not.
Being your own tiny demon.
Yeah, like coaching myself. Oftentimes I'm coaching my clients on something, but I actually need a different thing.
Oh,
it's one of the things I'm learning. So I'm just curious, when you were telling me that, like, was that your process in these moments?
Yeah, I mean,
medicine.
Well, it's exactly how you said it. We all need different medicine sometimes. I mean, sometimes I don't need to write at all. Sometimes I just need to sit and stare at that cloud that you mentioned, or drink my tea, or cry for as long as I need to cry. And it's not going to help if I force myself to sit down and write. But I think there's always a moment when I know I need to write if I'm going to get through, it's time to just get it out. And if I'm listening, allowing myself to listen deeply to myself and that inner knowing, then I write and then I do it. So I do take my own advice, and not always, and not necessarily when I should. But I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a sense that, like, in my moments of writing, and I do have many paths into writing. I've had the thing where I do the free write.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the times when I, like, sit down with pen and paper and my guitar, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I strum something, I hum something, and then I discover this thing that was inside this whole time. So it's a discovery. And then I do definitely have those points of, like, I figured out a thing and now I need to tell people about it. Had that path in. But there's this, like, the more that I sit down with it and do the writing, there is this arc of tapping into emotions and intuition, not knowing where it's going, and then following the path. It's like every time I sit to write is a mini adventure in what intuition and trust and the relationship with myself and relationships with, like, wonder.
Yeah.
Like, over and over again each time I sit down. And I have a curiosity about, like, whether, I don't know, the interconnection between, like, you and your writing and you, like, whether, like, it's integral to your relationship with just being here in the world, like, if it found you or you needed it, or
both, all of the above, I think.
Yeah. So what, is there something you're working on now?
You mean, like, right now? like on the couch I'm writing something. Please hold. So I have to continue my masterpiece. Well, there is a memoir that's lurking out there, and it has certainly been on hold this year. That's been something that's been pretty hard to get to. To focus on a big writing project in the midst of a major year of grief has not been something I could do. I could finish work projects in some ways. I've created some new work things that I also love and that also feel really creative, but it's very different than writing a book.
Oh, okay.
I've been able to write essays, so those things are happening and out in the world. But yeah, so I'm hopeful that moving into a new year, some of that's going to shift and I'll be able to get back to some of the bigger book projects that feel good to me.
Nice. It is technically solstice-y. Like, I guess it technically happened earlier this morning. And actually, last night was the longest night. Technically longer as the night. It's the 21st of December for marking time, which is a nice time to let something shift and move.
Let shit shift.
Yeah. I know one of the things I think you specifically declared something new as a tool for yourself. Are you willing to share this?
Do you want to remind me?
Yes, like many tools. Let me see. I think you declared, it may have been 3 weeks ago-ish.
It's so good to have someone tracking my declarations.
Of feeling challenged about this season because of your friend's death.
Yeah. And
choosing to focus on, is the word delight?
Yeah.
I loved this prompting that you did for yourself. Did you call it a thing? Is it did you title it an adventure?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just calling it my delight report. So every day this month of December 2017, I've been posting a delight report on Facebook and finding the delights in the day to share. And delight, I would say, is deeply connected to joy. So it's, some of what we've already talked about, but just a different word for it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just flashed on this memory. My unconscious mind is throwing up images and fun things inside. One of my super saddest moments. I call it super saddest moment because it was, how old was I? 19 or 20. I think I was depressed. It must have been an end of a relationship, and I was very sad. and I think I'd been crying and sleeping and just that for 3 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And my alarm clock kept going off for what my life was supposed to be doing, but like, so the alarm clock goes off, and I guess I'd had some sort of classic station on, and so at one of my saddest moments in my life at that point, the song "Woman in Love" Barbra Streisand comes on.
I don't think I know it, but I can imagine.
It's co-produced by, I think, Barry Gibb.
Is it a Barbara ballad, or is it like
no, it's like an upbeat, like,
yeah.
Life is a moment, da, da, da. It's like,
oh, I think I know that.
I am a woman in love, and I give everything to get you. So I'm like sad about love loss. I'm like heartbroken. And
right,
like,
and that's what.
gross, full of like crying sweat and sleeping for 3 days in a bed. And what comes on the radio is this Woman in Love song, and it's pretty bad. It's like disco flavored, but then Barbara like classical, and Barbara's great, but this song, it's probably in the range of like terrible good. It's like bad
like
good.
Our poetry from early in life.
Yes, and so it comes on loud and proud in my room, and it's so strikingly absurd in this moment that I start laughing.
Yeah.
Hysterically, and that was the moment that I got better. It was just this like the lowest low point, this terrible hilarious song comes on,
mm-hmm.
and I just like, my body's shaking, I'm like laugh crying, and so now it's one of my favorite like karaoke tunes. Like finding delight in these low places. That's what flashed for me.
Uh-huh.
And that. What have been some of your like delightful moments in the last month?
They have been the really simple ones. You
Yeah.
know, like yesterday, my post was super simple. It was a picture I shared of the sky that, you know, and it was just Delight Report day 20, the sky. And it was just this beautiful gray flanked by pink, bordered by pink. It was sort of like my magical yellow glow around, except it had the pink glow around.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it's just been laughing with my partner, you know, or a really sweet message from someone, or seeing something silly, or the hummingbird coming up to our feeder, you know. Well, that's actually, I'm calling it a feeder, but it's not. It's like total hummingbird deception.
What?
Because it's really just it's a candle holder that is this bright red glass. And so it looks like a feeder. And now I'm even calling it one, which is so sad because the hummingbird never finds food in it.
Oh, shoot.
Because there's a candle in it. So anyway, but seeing something that wild and magical, that close,
Mm-hmm.
you know, those are the moments that I feel like I keep coming back to.
That's funny. Because now what flashed in my head is I went to a friend's father's funeral. I think this was in the first few weeks of my dizziness. I had a dizzy spell for like 3 months straight of being constantly dizzy. Had a balance condition thing, but a friend had asked me to help her sing a song at her father's funeral, and so there were 3 of us that sang this. One Voice, Waylon Jennings. I don't know if you know the song.
Mm-mm.
So I learned the guitar part, and I was sitting there playing, and there was a gathering. And what's interesting is what people remembered in the stories that they told. It just stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Here I was, glad that it wasn't my own loss, so that I could sing, because I don't know if I could. If somebody like, so if any of my friends are watching, please don't ask me to sing at your funeral. I don't think it's possible. I don't think I'm capable of that. But so I was sharing song, and all of the stories were about these kinds of moments. Like, sometimes I get really into my like entrepreneurial self, that ego, and make the list of why I'm important to be here. I help people quit smoking. I help somebody like do their job. I help them in this marketing strategy. And remember, you know, like they make the list. And essentially, all of the stories about this beautiful man who was a pastor and was a father to all these people and a friend, the stories were I remember his hands. I'm just listening, and they would describe his hands and what his hands would feel like when he would put his hand on your shoulder. Or I remember how he listened. You know, like there wasn't like the money that he made or the, you know, like his job title. It was these small moments of like, we sat there, I had a rough day, he showed up for me, we sat there, and then the sun set. Was the story. That like, essentially, when people reflect on someone in these moments, there's these things you wouldn't put on a resume or a website to describe who you are and what you offer in the world.
I feel like we have such a messed up understanding of treasure in Western culture. You know, like everything you just listed is what I would call treasure.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we allow ourselves to go to those places that are hard, to grieve or be present to death and what comes after, then I think that's when the treasures surface. And that's, you know, probably what Kate Gray was suggesting a little bit, you know, that's the path to it. If you let yourself be there in it, then it, you know, the treasures can come, sprout up.
Yeah. Well, I just love that in your prompting for yourself, it's like, here's what it sounded like to me. This month feels hard. So I'm going to deliberately focus on delight, but I'm not just going to do that. I'm letting you know. I'm making a pledge to myself for this month. I'm going to do a thing. You gave yourself like a project to show up to, and then like an audience and a connection of community to be with while doing it. And that's huge. I don't know. I just wanted to mark that because.
Thank you.
Because I don't know. Has it felt like a kind of gift you've given yourself each day?
Mm-hmm. It has. I mean, I feel like and who knows when or why exactly a shift happens. I mean, not everybody has Barbra Streisand come onto their radio for a very clear, and now this part is over and I'm moving on. So, you know, I do feel like it has been part of a shift this month for me to say, I have a choice, you know, in showing up to life and where I put my focus, and putting my focus on delight and doing that as a way to honor my friend who was like an enormous source of delight. We had equal love for the word delight. You know, she used it a lot too. And she had a period of time some years ago on Facebook where she would just list today's delightfulness. And so in part it was, you know, honoring her through that too. And it does feel like it's helped me be healed through those simple delights, joys, pleasures, be more available to them, be more cognizant of them, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
So yes, it's helped.
Nice. Yeah. I am part of the reason why I'm actually, I don't know if I already said this, part of the reason why I'm actually sitting here, one of the reasons why I said, I guess when this project started, I don't know, I've always enjoyed conversations I have with people. My friends would get annoyed with me. We would go into some sort of like a boutique somewhere just while we're hanging out, and then I'd end up talking to the person who owned the boutique for a while and just like dropping in. But my friend, when she had found out she was given this 6 months to live, I don't know, is that a diagnosis? I don't know. She sent an email to all of her friends, and she's hilarious. She wrote, "I won the lottery." Because essentially most artists, she's also a writer, playwright, and was working on a memoir at the time. A lot of us have had the, like, if I had 6 months to live fantasy, what would I do with it? And so she sort of wrote this email to us from this perspective. And then through this giant week-long party, she invited everyone that she's known, these amazing people she'd been privileged to know and spend time with and connect with. She invited all of us together, and it was just this like rolling week of gathering. And her premise was that the amazing people that she loved and knew should meet each other because they might really enjoy each other. So for a whole week, conversation after conversation was just magical. She was right. She was surrounded by these just amazing, beautiful people. And I loved every moment of that and had wished that I'd been able to like capture it.
Yeah.
Because the world is full of just fantastic people.
Bonkers, amazing people.
Right? Here to make an impact just by how they listen and how they choose to offer their hands to you. Right? And I just wanted to be able to capture more of that and like let people in. I don't know, so I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here.
I'm glad you're here. I have a curiosity. Do you mind if I ask you like what your favorite bits about like just the work aspects of you and helping other people around this writing tool that they may or may not think that they can like, I am a writer. Like what's some of what you love about doing that?
I love that question. I think a way that you described yourself earlier is also a way that I would describe myself in terms of being a catalyst. I think that's big for me. I love to light someone up and say, now off with you, go do your thing, to help them find whatever the spark is in themselves. And in writing to say, oh, here's your manuscript. So like people will sometimes send me their books, and as a developmental editor, I'll do a review of the book to say, this is what's thriving, this is what you might need to build on or take out or whatever, to help it flow and honor your intention. And I love that, to focus a critique not on, well, this sucks and that sucks, and oh my god, I just totally attached, like I hooked my rings together. This is gonna be dramatic. I would be like in a fold like this.
That's funny.
I might even have to, oh no, I got it free. Okay.
Success.
Well, and sometimes that's what I do as an editor too. Like there are things that are hooked together in ways, that keep the story stuck, that I'm like, no, just shift it like this.
Yeah.
And this is what's already working for you. So, as Tim Gunn might say, make it work. Right?
Yes.
So sort of like that.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love facilitating. So workshops, retreats, even my workshops, I would say are more like retreats than workshops.
Nice.
Because I like reflection and ritual. And I think that's one of my strengths and one of the things that I really enjoy, creating sacred environments for people where they can relax and reflect and create, and sanctuary spaces, Yeah.
Nice. I love the developmental part. I think of where I'm best is in that like the sort of some of the beginning stages or the taking it to the next level stages for people, helping them, because there are people when I go out and I network and I describe what I can help people do, they're like, are you a coach? And then I have to reflect. I'm like, I feel like I'm more of a plumber. And that there's some sort of clogging or blockage that some people come up to, and they sort of have this urgent need to shift it. And I'm great at that. And like helping people along the way. Like if I were an editor, I don't think I would be the one that you go to at the end of the thing. Like ties it all up. But the like that I don't know, I'm getting a sense of it being very like beautifully messy when they hand you the piece, and that sounds really intriguing to me.
Yeah,
to be in the confusion of like surrounded by all of the problems, but finding the magic in them and what is working, and then like build these things, and then poof, and suddenly they're not as untied, and it's I don't know, jump rope. Do I follow the metaphor?
You untie the knot and then you have a jump rope?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I love it. How frequently do you do retreats? Because I kind of want to go.
Okay, that sounds good. I think there's going to be one coming up in the spring, so I don't have a date for it yet.
Cool.
but I will notify you and others. Maybe you too.
Yeah, the timing might work out that like when they hear this, they know they could go to it.
Yeah.
So retreats that you give are they're like retreats instead of workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's more about play and reflection for me. And certainly there are things like when I have a workshop, people learn stuff, but it's not the stuff that, you know, you learn in school. It's, you know, or that we wish we could get a PhD.
Yeah.
Like cracking your heart wide open. Like, is there a PhD in that?
No.
I mean, that's the thing that I'm interested in saying, right. How do I create an environment? How do we co-create something, a space where you can get below all of that bullshit surface chatter and write something that's from your heart, and not the thing that you should write, or not to sound like that writer you love, but to be you, to unleash your essential you-ness.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but do you teach the workshop Cracking Your Heart Wide Open?
No, but I was just thinking that's
holy God, that's really good.
Name.
I would go to that and then be scared and then be there and then do it.
I would probably go to it and be scared and be there and do it too.
Because when you said it, I was like, I wonder if I could teach the performance version of that workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's sort of an edge point of like having access, cracking your heart open such that you can drop into the song or the thing you're presenting
mm-hmm.
in a way that still has the safety for your audience. Like how to crack open but also take care of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Is there do you actually have a way for people to crack themselves open? Do you know the path?
I'm gonna let you in on a really big secret. No, I feel I guess yes, I do. I think we all do.
Yeah.
And I think it's showing up and it's writing through it, and it's not stopping. I mean, free writing for me has become, in some ways, like it is for Natalie Goldberg, who's one of, you know her work.
A friend is teaching a workshop, Writing Your Way to Song, based on Goldberg's work.
Yeah, Writing Down the Bones has been one of my favorite formative texts on how to really crack my heart open as a writer. And it's free writing, which means writing without stopping, coming back to a prompt again and again and again, and not just getting below all of the crap that's happening in your head, because we all have so much of that. And when we get below that, that's when we get to, and not like the Indiana Jones, I mean, maybe, but less violent than that.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I think my friend said this thing about, I think it's from Writing from, I don't know, I haven't read it. I think I have that book in my Kindle. I haven't opened it, but is Writing Down the Bones?
Mm-hmm.
I think she said something about the more specific you get about your own story.
Yep.
The more people find themselves in it. Because some people want something to be universally known. It's the piece that I know from that, is that actually contrary to what people might assume about universality, is the more specific you are in your story, the more people can see themselves.
The more universal it is. Yeah.
I think I gotta read this.
Yeah,
book.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think I know entirely the path. I think probably for me, doing that workshop, like in order to do the workshop, I would have to find out how it's done. If that makes sense. Like
it does.
Much in the way that you gave yourself the delight assignment. I'm like, I'm gonna do that workshop.
Yeah, let's give ourselves that assignment. We'll do it and we'll see what we learn.
I love it.
And maybe you'll come learn with us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like we maybe did a thing.
I think we did a thing.
I think we did a thing.
We were here, we sat here.
Yeah.
Things happened. Things were said. That which wasn't said was insinuated.
Fair. I think, I had one more thought.
Yeah.
We were talking about the imposter syndrome that people have with writing. And this is something that I think is kind of important. And I think it's not just my own thought. I think Elizabeth Gilbert, since people like her a lot and she's a writer, she said it too. I've read a lot of things recently. I got a library card. put the library card into my phone, so now I've got like audiobooks and
Yeah.
ebooks. So I've been reading a lot of books lately,
Mhm.
and I gotta say they're not very good,
Hmm.
which is really inspiring. Because essentially, like, I think a lot of people are concerned when they write that they have to actually be good writing. Like, what they write has to be good, and they have to be good at
But
writing.
it has to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a secret that people don't know, but that I think Elizabeth Gilbert has this thing, let's see if I get it right. She's like, I sit down and write. Like, I show up to the muse, and then she does the best she can, but like, she can't write any better than that. It's like, she like lets go of whether it's good or not.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I did my job. I wrote it. You know, it's
Mhm.
not up to me whether it's good or not.
Yeah.
I have a curiosity, like, how do you help people say yes to the writing and then put it in the world if they're afraid about whether it's good or not?
Well, I mean, that can never be the thing that you start with. Like, you're not going to be able to start if that's, you know. So to get to that place where you realize it's not your concern. Your concern is what led you to writing in the first place, which is, you know, probably something that has to do with, at least for me, that connection to a joyful expression. You know, that urge to vitality, to your own wild yell, roar, yawp, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's your job. Let it out. Revision is what comes when you think about, oh, maybe I'm going to publish this. And, you know, and then there's work to do, and there are ways to do that and techniques to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the other stuff is just getting in the way of that. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it sort of, it's not our jobs to be good at writing. It's to get it the heck out.
Mm-hmm.
I think is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good translation.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially not in the creative process.
Yeah, I mean, revision can be creative too.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's different than the initial the creative vomit. It's different than that part. It's the cleaning up the vomit.
True.
I'm making a terrible metaphor.
No, but the other thing is, essentially, and this is like, if you're writing something, it's only your job is to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people whose job it is to figure out how to craft it in a way that it's presentable to other people. That's a whole nother person's job. That's an editor's job in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the version of editing that you do with people
Mm-hmm.
is help them like, hey, you got it out. Here's how it can.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good news.
It is good news.
I think,
Good news for you.
yeah, I think we always sort of get stuck thinking we have to do all of the things.
Yeah. No. Well, we're buying into that myth that everything has to be self-generated and self-determined and self-whatever, instead of remembering that we're actually connected beings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that might be one of the challenges of the rebel American individualist
Mm-hmm.
frontierism story of
Yeah.
who we're supposed to be here.
And look at where that's gotten us.
Dun, dun, dun. To be continued,
Yeah.
I suppose. Where has that gotten us?
Yeah.
I actually love that we, some of the challenges of where that's gotten us has led more people to connect more.
Yep.
And so that's awesome.
It is.
That's part of why I reached out to have you hang out with me here today.
Why we're here.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. I around writing and whether it's good or not, I think my closing of this journey is like there are moments where I'm great, I think, probably at doing this, like, talk to people and have cameras pointed at me thing. There's craft going on. But I also gave myself permission to say yes to this adventure. I gave myself permission to not be in my best shape and to maybe not be very good at this.
Nice.
Yeah. So hopefully people like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not up to me.
Yes, exactly. Much like what we just discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, not our job right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think we did great then.
I think so too. I even got my rings unlocked.
I know, it was magical. Would you like some chocolate?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's how that went. Thanks for joining us on this episode. Thanks for watching, listening, I don't know, reading, imbibing, however you took this in. Thanks for being here. And if you really enjoyed it, I'd love it if you would do all of the things. Like, share, I don't know, ring a bell, bang a gong, tell a friend, and come back next time. I hope you had as much fun as I had.